everybody, good morning. Welcome to yet another live read of Jane Eyre with the Chattering Magpie. Happy Monday, happy Mind Day for those of you a sense of a bookworm fans who are reading Breedpub. So it has been a while. Let's say what last time I went live, it was Friday. So time to catch up on what happened with Jane and Rochester and how their marriage is gonna play out from here on out. But before we do so, let me say hi, then I'll do a quick summary and we'll get started. So let's see. Early gang. Hello, welcome, especially to first comment award goes to Akihana, who probably is still here, probably not. Time is, time zones are time zoning, so it might be super late in the Philippines, but Akihana, welcome, and thank you for joining in. So here, have a whole bunch of hearts, lots of hearts. It says, here's a suggestion to call the early gang. Why not early birds? You know what? Yes, after Jane Eyre, we'll just say hello, early birds. I like it. So hello. It says I probably won't be awake for this, so I look forward to watching the replay. Yeah, I understand. Time zones are doing their thing, and I probably would have done it a little bit later, but I have another event on the server scheduled. And so looking forward to it. But don't worry, on Wednesday I'll change it up a little so that people can catch it live who are not able to catch it live. So but yeah, be on the lookout for the time for that. And let's see. Also says Akihana, I do wonder when Jane will tell Rochester about her uncle. Ooh, I think she said. Oh no, she told her uncle about Rochester. She wrote a letter to her uncle. But I don't think she has told Rochester about her uncle yet, has she? Maybe she's gonna be like, surprise! I'm not the unprotected person you think I am. I actually do have a male relative, and I probably will inherit a whole bunch of money. Ha ha ha! I don't know, she's waiting for that surprise. For the proper time for that surprise. Alright, so we'll see. Also, Akihana says, I do wonder, or could her uncle possibly make a surprise visit? Wow, in a month? I don't know about it happening though. Because who knows what her uncle's, did the uncle get the letter in time? And if he does, he's in Madeira, which is somewhere in the Indies or somewhere out there in the middle of in the Atlantic Ocean. So who knows if he'll make it to the wedding? We'll see. We'll see. Let's see. And then, all right. Thank you for sharing your thoughts, Akihana. And let's see who else is chatted in. Red Tempest says, oh man, I'm going to miss this session, but have fun without me. Red, how dare you tell me to have fun without you? Without you, there's no fun. Kidding, my friend. I know you do your thing, and the video for your replay enjoyment will be here forever. Don't worry, it's never going to be taken down. So I hope you enjoy it. Little Butterfly also can't make it today, so I don't know if I'm just here by my lonesome, and that's fine because I will be doing this with love and affection for every single one of you guys. These are some good chapters that are coming up. I don't know if I'll be able to do the 2 chapters. I really want to get to the 2nd chapter, but I don't know. We'll see. Okay, and Akihana says, want to tune, but my lids are... Yeah, go to bed. It's okay. Go to sleep. We'll be slumbering to Magpie's enchanting voice. Thank you, darling. I will do my best to be as soothing and ASMR-y as possible. Akihana, good night. Sleep well. Noodles, Dumplings, Kimchi says, hey, Magpie, can't wait to get this started. Awesome! So Noodles is here. Awesome. I'm glad that even if it's just you and me, Noodles, it'll be worth it. Like I said, I will still do this even if there's no one on the live. Because I know schedules happen, so but it's always fun to know that there's somebody on the other side. And let's see, Uh, regarding the uncle, as Noodle says, there is no way he's coming to the wedding. Do you think he objects? Do you think the letter, the postal service had its challenges back in the day. Like it had to be taken by a horse to a ship, and then the ship would sail, across. But then there were storms and maybe ships sank, so bye bye, there went your letters. Who knows? I don't know. It was just very not as reliable as it is. You know what I mean? Maybe it's the post office. Yeah, the post office's fault. And yeah, you make a good point. I know we take it for granted, but back then, getting any correspondence was a small miracle. Yeah, people got so excited for mail that they would people literally would get letters and store them and store them and store them, and it could be like, for example, you were a grandkid and you inherited your grandmother's things. Well, one of your grandmother's things could be letters, like all the letters she received, she would tie them up and organize them. Not just love letters, like literally letters, because they held accounts of what was happening. In fact, a lot of our understanding of historical stuff and how life was back in the day was not just books. It was actually historians sorting through letters and piecing together what life was like in Victorian era. There were, of course, autobiographies and such, but autobiographies and biographies, they tend to sometimes color reality, but letters are faithful narratives, and they really do. I think they were more accurate of the times, I suppose. And also, yes, not only that, exceedingly expensive. Yes, do you know what they used to do? At least during Jane Eyre, not Jane Eyre, Jane Austen's time. Sorry, during Jane Austen's time. Let's say you got a letter or a piece of paper to write on. You would first write like regular, and then you would turn your paper 90 degrees, and then you would write that way. So basically, you were writing over the first part. So you had to make the paper twice last as long that way, because they would charge you per page, and if you wrote in the back, I think that counted as a page. So you had to make your single-sided page last. So all right, so I think we got everybody. Thank you for joining, and let's see. Let's get this thing started. So, a small summary of what happened in Jane Eyre. We have Jane is governess. She works for Mr. Rochester as the governess to his ward Adele. They fall in love, but it is evident that Rochester has many secrets, especially something in the past happened that makes his day-to-day life very bitter, he just has like something weighing on him. Regardless, they fall in love, and Jane, Jane learns that she also has an uncle. This is the uncle we've been talking about all this time, who's still living, and she was like, cool, because she thought that she had no living relatives, so she's not as unprotected as she thought she was. And also, the uncle was looking for her because he's like, yeah, I have no family, so when I die, I want to leave everything I have to you, and I want to adopt you as my own. Jane is like, cool. Anyway, so she's gonna get married. She has like this period of courtship, or like engagement, which is like 1 month. And you guys, 1 month is crazy. It is a crazy short, not just for us, because we usually tend to plan a huge wedding and whatnot, but in Victorian era, it would take like 6 months to 2 years before you got married after the engagement period. So it was a very long engagement period. So Jane getting married to Rochester in 1 month is absolutely bonkers. And but nevertheless, Rochester is insistent that they're gonna get married. He's rushing things along. Like, this is not at all problematic. Not at all problematic, you guys. Anyway, so here we have our happy couple. They're getting ready for a wedding, and it is time for me to delve into it. And I hope you enjoy it. Chapter 25. The month of courtship had wasted. Its very last hours were being numbered. There was no putting off the day that advanced, the bridal day, and all preparations for its arrival were complete. I, at least, had nothing more to do. There were my trunks, packed, locked, hoarded, ranged in a row along the wall of my little chamber. Tomorrow, at this time, they would be far on the road to London, and so should I. Or rather, not I, but one Jane Rochester, a person whom as yet I knew not. The cards of address alone remained to nail on. They lay, 4 little squares, in the drawer. Mr. Rochester had himself written the direction: Mrs. Rochester, blank Hotel, London. On each I could not persuade myself to affix them, or to have them affixed. Mrs. Rochester! She did not exist. She would not be born till tomorrow, some time after 8 o'clock a.m., and I would wait to be assured she had come into the world alive before I assigned her to all that property. It was enough that in yonder closet, opposite my dressing table, garments said to be hers had already displaced my black stuff longwood frock and straw bonnet, for not to me appertained that suit of wedding raiment, the pearl-colored robe, the vapory veil pendant from the usurped portmanteau. I shut the closet to conceal the strange wraith-like apparel it contained, which at this evening hour, 9 o'clock, gave out, certainly, a most ghostly shimmer through the shadow of my apartment. "I will leave you by yourself, White Dream," I said. "I am feverish. I hear the wind blowing. I will go out of doors and feel it." It was not only the hurry of preparation that made me feverish, not only the anticipation of the great change, the new life which was to commence tomorrow. Both these circumstances had their share, doubtless, in producing that restless, excited mood which hurried me forth at this late hour into the darkening grounds. For the third cause influenced my mind more than they. I had a, I had, I had at heart a strange and anxious thought. Something had happened which I could not comprehend. No one knew of, or had seen the event but myself. It had taken place the preceding night. Mr. Rochester that night was absent from home, nor was he yet returned. Business had called him to a small estate of 2 or 3 farms he possessed 30 miles off. Business it was requisite he should settle in person, previous to his meditated departure from England. I waited now his return, eager to disburden my mind, and to seek of him the solution of the enigma that perplexed me. Stay till he comes, reader. And now, when I disclose my secret to him, stay till he comes, reader. And when I disclose my secret to him, you shall share the confidence. I sought the orchard, driven to its shelter by the wind, which all day had blown strong and full from the south, without, however, bringing a speck of rain. Instead of subsiding as night drew on, it seemed to augment its rush and deepen its roar. The trees blew steadfastly one way, never riding round, and scarcely tossing back their boughs once in an hour. So continuous was the strain bending their branchy heads northward. The clouds drifted from pole to pole, past following, mass on mass. No glimpse of blue sky had been visible that July day. It was not without a certain wild pleasure that I ran before the wind, delivering my trouble of mind to the measureless air torrent thundering through space. Descending on the laurel walk, I faced the wreck of the chestnut tree. It stood up black and riven, the trunk, split down the center, gasped ghastly. The cloven halves were not broken from each other, for the firm base and strong roots kept them unsundered below, though community of vitality was destroyed. The sap could flow no more. Their great boughs on each side were dead, and next winter's tempest would be sure to fell one or both to earth. As yet, however, they might be said to form one tree, a ruin, but an entire ruin. You did well, you did right to hold fast to each other, I said, as if the monster splinters were living things and could hear me. I think, swathed as you look, and charred and scorched, there must be a little sense of life in you yet, rising out of that adhesion at the faithful, honest roots. You will never have green leaves more, never more see birds making nests and singing idyls in your boughs. The time for pleasure and love is over with you, but you're not desolate. Each of you has a comrade to sympathize with him in his decay. As I looked up at them, the moon appeared momentarily in that part of the sky which filled their fissure. Her disk was blood-red and half overcast. She seemed to throw on me one bewildered, dreary glance, and buried herself again instantly in the deep drift of cloud. The wind fell for a second round Thornfield, but far away over wood and water poured a wild, melancholy wail. It was sad to listen to, and I ran off again. Here and there I strayed through the orchard, gathered up the apples with which the grass round the tree roots was thickly strewn, then employed myself in dividing the ripe from the unripe. I carried them into the house and put them away in the storeroom. Then I repaired to the library to ascertain whether whether the fire was lit. For, though summer, I knew on such a gloomy evening Mr. Rochester would like to see a cheerful hearth when he came in. Yes, the fire had been kindled some time and burnt well. I placed his armchair by the chimney corner. I wheeled the table near it. I let down the curtain. I had the candles brought in ready for lighting. More restless than ever, when I had completed these arrangements, I could not sit still, nor even remain in the house. A little timepiece in the room and the old clock in the hall simultaneously struck 10. How late it grows, I said. I will run down to the gates. It is moonlight at intervals. I can see a good way on the road. He may be coming now, and to meet him will save some minutes of suspense. The wind roared high in the great trees which embowered the gates, but the road, as far as I could see, to the right hand and the left, was all still and solitary, save for the shadows of clouds crossing it at intervals as the moon looked out. It was but a long, pale line, unvaried by one moving speck. A puerile tear dimmed my eye while I looked, a tear of disappointment and impatience. Ashamed of it, I wiped it away. I lingered. The moon shut herself wholly within her chamber and drew close her curtain of dense cloud. The night grew dark. Rain came driving fast on the gale. I wish he would come. I wish he would come, I exclaimed, seized with a hypochondriac foreboding. I had expected his arrival before tea. Now it was dark. What could keep him? Had an accident happened? The event of last night again recurred to me. I interpreted it as a warning of disaster. I feared my hopes were too bright to be realized, and had enjoyed so much bliss lately that I imagined my fortune had passed its meridian and must now decline. Well, I cannot return to the house. I cannot sit by the fireside while he is abroad in inclement weather. Better tire my limbs than strain my heart. I will go forward and meet him. I set out. I walked fast, but not far. Ere I had measured a quarter of a mile, I heard the tramp of hoofs. A horseman came on, full gallop. A dog ran by his side. Away with evil presentiment! It was he! Here he was, mounted on Miss Roer, followed by Pilot. He saw me, for the moon had opened a blue field in the sky, and rode in it watery bright. He shook his hat off and waved it round his head. I now ran to meet him. There! He exclaimed as he stretched out his hand and bent from the saddle. You can't do without me, that is evident. Step on my boot toe. Give me both hands. Mount. I obeyed. Joy made me agile. I sprang up before him. A hearty kissing I got for a welcome, and some boastful triumph which I swallowed as well as I could. He checked himself in his exultation to demand, "But is there anything the matter, Janet, that you have come to meet me at such an hour? Is there anything wrong?" "No, but I thought you would never come. I could not bear to wait in the house for you, especially with this rain and wind." "Rain and wind, indeed. Yes, you are dripping like a mermaid. Pull my cloak round you, but I think you're feverish, Jane. Both your cheek and hand are burning hot. I ask again, is there anything the matter?" "Nothing now. I am neither afraid nor unhappy." "Then you have been both." "Rather. But I'll tell you about it by and by, sir, and I dare say you will only laugh at me for my pains." "I'll laugh at you heartily when tomorrow is past. Till then I dare not. My price is not certain. This is you, who have been as slippery as an eel this last month, and as thorny as a briar rose. I could not lay a finger anywhere but I was pricked, and now I seem to have gathered up a stray lamb in my arms. You wandered out of the fold to seek your shepherd, did you, Jane?" "I wanted you, but don't boast. Here we are at Thornfield. Now let me get down." He landed me on the pavement. As John took his horse and he followed me into the hall, he told me to make haste and put something dry on, and then return to him in the library. And he stopped me as I made for the staircase to extort a promise that I would not be long, nor was I long. In 5 minutes I rejoined him. I found him at supper. "Take a seat and bear me company, Jane. Please God, it is the last meal but one you will eat at Thornfield Hall for a long time." I sat down near him, but I told him I could not eat. "Is it because you have the prospect of a journey before you, Jane? Is it the thoughts of going to London that takes away your appetite?" "I cannot see my prospects clearly tonight, sir, and I hardly know what thoughts I have in my head. Everything in life seems unreal." "Except me. I am substantial enough. Touch me." "You, sir, are the most phantom-like of all. You're a mere dream." He held out his hand, laughing. "Is that a dream?" said he, placing it close to my eyes. He had a rounded, muscular, and vigorous hand, as well as a long, strong arm. "Yes, though I touch it, it is a dream," said I, as I put it down from before my face. "Sir, have you finished supper?" "Yes, Jane." I rang the bell and ordered away the tray. When we were again alone, I stirred the fire and then took a low seat at my master's knee. "It is near midnight." "Yes, but remember, Jane, you promised to wake with me the night before my wedding." "I did, and I will keep my promise, for an hour or two at least. I have no wish to go to bed." "Are all your arrangements complete?" "All, sir." "And on my part likewise. I have settled everything, and we shall leave Thornfield tomorrow, within half an hour after our return from church." "Very well, sir." With what an extraordinary smile you uttered that word, "very well, Jane." What a bright spot of color you have on each cheek. How strangely your eyes glitter. Are you unwell?" "I believe I am." "Believe? What is the matter? Tell me what you feel." "I could not, sir. No words could tell you what I feel. I wish this present hour would never end. Who knows with what fate the next may come charged." "This is hypochondria, Jane. You have been overexcited or overfatigued." "Do you, sir, feel calm and happy?" "Calm? No, but happy to the heart's core." I looked up at him to read the signs of bliss in his face. It was ardent and flushed. "Give me your confidence, Jane. Relieve your mind of any weight that oppresses it by imparting it to me. What do you fear? That I shall not prove to be a good husband?" "It is the idea farthest from my thoughts." "Are you apprehensive of the new sphere you are about to enter? Of the new life into which you are passing?" "No." "You puzzle me, Jane. Your look and tone of sorrowful audacity perplex and pain me. I want an explanation." "Then, sir, listen. You were home from last night." "I was. I know that, and you hinted a while ago at something which had happened in my absence. Nothing probably of consequence, but in short, it has disturbed you." Let me hear it. Mrs. Fairfax has said something, perhaps? Or you have overheard the servants talk? Your sensitive self-respect has been wounded? No, sir. It struck 12. I waited till the timepiece had concluded its silver chime, and the clock its hoarse vibrating stroke, and then I proceeded. All day yesterday I was very busy and very happy in my ceaseless bustle, for I am not, as you seem to think, troubled by any haunting fears about the new sphere, etc. I think it a glorious thing to have the hope of living with you, because I love you. No, sir, don't caress me now. Let me talk undisturbed. Yesterday, I trusted well in Providence, and I believed that events were working together for your good and mine. It was a fine day, if you recollect. The calmness of the air and sky forbade apprehensions respecting your safety or comfort on your journey. I walked a little while on the pavement after tea, thinking of you, and I beheld you in imagination so near me, I scarcely missed your actual presence. I thought of the life that lay before me, your life, sir, an existence more expansive and stirring than my own, and as much more so as the depths of the sea to which the brook runs are than the shallows of its own straight channel. I wondered why moralists call this world a dreary wilderness. For me it blossomed like a rose. Just at sunset, the air turned cold and the sky cloudy. I went in. Sophie called me upstairs to look at my wedding dress, which they had just brought, and under it, in the box, I found your present. The veil which, in your princely extravagance, you sent for from London. Resolved, I suppose, since I would not have jewels, to cheat me into accepting something as costly. I smiled as I unfolded it, and devised how I would tease you about your aristocratic tastes, and your efforts to mask your plebeian bride in the attributes of a peeress. I thought how I would carry down to you the square of embroidered blonde I had myself prepared as a covering for my low-born head, and ask if that was not good enough for a woman who could bring her husband neither fortune, beauty, nor connections. I saw plainly how you would look, and heard your impetuous republican answers and your haughty disavowal of any necessity on your part to augment your wealth or elevate your standing by marrying either a purse or a coronet. How well you read me, you witch! Interposed Mr. Rochester. But what did you find in the veil besides its embroidery? Did you find poison or a dagger that you look so mournful now? No, no, sir. Besides the delicacy and richness of the fabric, I found nothing save Fairfax Rochester's pride, and that did not scare me, because I am used to the sight of the demon. But, sir, as it grew dark, the wind rose. It blew yesterday evening, not as it blows now, wild and high, but with a sullen moaning sound, far more eerie. I wished you were at home. I came into this room, and the sight of the empty chair and fireless hearth chilled me. For some time after I went to bed, I could not sleep. A sense of anxious excitement distressed me. The gale, still rising, seemed to my ear to muffle a mournful undersound. Whether in the house or abroad, I could not at first tell, but it recurred, doubtful yet doleful at every lull. At last, I made out it must be some dog howling at a distance. I was glad when it ceased. On sleeping, I continued in dreams the idea of a dark and gusty night. I continued also the wish to be with you, and experienced a strange, regretful conscience of some barrier dividing us. During all my first sleep, I was following the windings of an unknown road. Total obscurity environed me. Rain pelted me. I was burdened with the charge of a little child, a very small creature, too young and feeble to walk, and which shivered in my cold arms and wailed piteously into my ear. I thought, sir, that you were on the road a long way before me, and I strained every nerve to overtake you, and made an effort to utter your name and entreat you to stop. But my movements were fettered, and my voice still died away inarticulate, while you, I felt, withdrew further and further every moment. And these dreams weigh on your spirits now, Jane, when I am close to you? Little nervous subject, forget visionary woe and think only of real happiness. You say you love me, Janet. Yes, I will not forget that, and you cannot deny it. Those words did not die inarticulate on your lips. I heard them clear and soft, a thought too solemn, perhaps, but sweet as music. I think it is a glorious thing to have the hope of living with you, Edward, because I love you. Do you love me, Jane? Repeat it. I do, sir. I do with my whole heart. Well, said he after some minutes of silence, it is strange, but that sentence has penetrated my breast painfully. Why? I think because you said it with such an earnest religious energy, and because your upward gaze at me is now the very sublime of faith, truth, and devotion. It is much as if some spirit were near me. Look wicked, Jane, as you know well how to look. Coin one of your wild, shy, provoking smiles. Tell me you hate me, tease me, vex me, do anything but move me. I would rather be incensed than saddened. I will tease you and vex you to your heart's content when I have finished my tale. But hear me to the end. I thought, Jane, you had told me all. I had found the source of your melancholy in a dream. I shook my head. What? There's more? Ugh, but I will not believe it to be anything important. I warn you of incredulity beforehand. Go on. The disquietude of his air, the somewhat apprehensive impatience of his manner surprised me, but I proceeded. I dreamed another dream, sir. That Thornfield Hall was a dreary ruin, the retreat of bats and owls. I thought that of all the stately front, nothing remained but a shell-like wall, very high and very fragile looking. I wandered on a moonlit night through the grass-grown enclosure within. Here I stumbled over a marble hearth, and there over a fallen fragment of cornice. Wrapped up in a shawl, I still carried the unknown little child. I might not lay it down anywhere, however tired were my arms, however much its weight impeded my progress. I must retain it. I heard the gallop of a horse a distance on the road. I was sure it was you, and you were departing for many years and for a distant country. I climbed the thin wall with a frantic, perilous haste, eager to catch one glimpse of you from the top. The stones rolled from under my feet. The ivy branches I grasped gave way. The child clung round my neck in terror and almost strangled me. At last I gained the summit. I saw you like a speck on a white track, lessening every moment. The blast blew so strong I could not stand. I sat down on the narrow ledge. I hushed the scared infant in my lap. You turned an angle of the road. I bent forward to take a last look. The wall crumbled. I was shaken. The child rolled from my knee. I lost my balance, fell, and woke. Now, Jane, that is all. All the preface, sir. The tale is yet to come. On waking, a gleam dazzled my eyes. I thought, oh, it is daylight. But I was mistaken. It was only candlelight. Sophie, I suppose, had come in. There was a light in the dressing table, and the door of the closet where, before going to bed, I had hung my wedding dress and veil, stood open. I heard a rustling there. I asked, Sophie, what are you doing? No one answered, but a form emerged from the closet. It took the light, held it aloft, and surveyed the garments pendant from the portmanteau. Sophie, Sophie! I again cried, and still it was silent. I had risen up in bed. I bent forward. First surprise, then bewilderment came over me. And then my blood crept cold through my veins. Mr. Rochester, this was not Sophie. It was not Leah. It was not Mrs. Fairfax. It was not, no, I was sure of it, and I am still. It was not even that strange woman, Grace Poole. It must have been one of them. No, sir. I solemnly assure you to the contrary. The shape standing before me had never crossed my eyes within the precincts of Thornfield Hall before. The height, the contour were new to me. Describe it, Jane. It seemed, sir, a woman, tall and large, with thick and dark hair hanging long down her back. I know not what dress she had on. It was white and straight, but whether gown, sheet, or shroud, I cannot tell. Did you see her face? Not at first, but presently she took my veil from its place. She held it up, gazed at it long, and then she threw it over her own head and turned to the mirror. At that moment I saw the reflection of the visage and features quite distinctly in the dark oblong glass. And how were they? Fearful and ghastly to me. Oh, sir, I never saw a face like it. It was a discolored face. It was a savage face. I wish I could forget the roll of the red eyes and the fearful blackened inflation of the lineaments. Ghosts are usually pale, Jane. This, sir, was purple. The lips were swelled and dark, the brow furrowed, the black eyebrows widely raised over the bloodshot eyes. Shall I tell you what it reminded me? You may. Of the foul German spectre, the vampire. Ah, what did it do? Sir, it removed my veil from its gaunt head, rent it in 2 parts, and flinging both on the floor, trampled on them. Afterwards, it drew aside the window curtain and looked out. Perhaps it saw dawn approaching, for, taking the candle, it retreated to the door. Just at my bedside, the figure stopped. The fiery eyes glared upon me. She thrust up her candle close to my face and extinguished it under my eyes. I was aware her lurid visage flamed over mine, and I lost consciousness. For the second time in my life, only the second time, I became insensible from terror. Who was it with you when you revived? No one, sir, but the broad day. I rose, bathed my head and face in water, drank a long draught, felt that, though enfeebled, I was not ill, and determined that no one but you would I impart this vision. Now, sir, tell me who and what that woman was. The creature of an overstimulated brain, that is certain. I must be careful of you, my treasure. Nerves like yours were not made for rough handling. Sir, depend upon it, my nerves were not in fault. The thing was real. The transaction actually took place. And your previous dreams, were they real too? Is Thornfield Hall a ruin? Am I severed from you by insuperable obstacles? Am I leaving you without a tear, without a kiss, without a word? Not yet. Am I about to do it? Why, the day's already commenced, which is to bind us indissolubly, and when we are once united, there shall be no recurrence of these mental terrors. I guarantee that. Mental terrors, sir? I wish I could believe them to be only such. I wish it more now than ever, since even you cannot explain to me the mystery of that awful visitant. And since I cannot do it, Jane, it must have been unreal. But, sir, when I said so to myself on rising this morning, and when I looked round the room to gather courage and comfort from the cheerful aspect of each familiar object in full daylight, there, on the carpet, I saw what gave the distinct lie to my hypothesis. The veil, torn from top to bottom in 2 halves. I felt Mr. Rochester start and shudder. He hastily flung his arms around me. Thank God, he exclaimed, that if anything malignant did come near you last night, it was only the veil that was harmed. Oh, to think what might have happened! He drew his breath short, and strained me so close to him I could scarcely pant. After some minutes of silence, he continued, cheerily. Now, Janet, I'll explain to you all about it. It was half dream, half reality. A woman I doubt not entered your room, and that woman must have been, Grace Poole. You call her a strange being yourself. From all you know, you have reason so to call her. What did she do to me? What to Mason? In a state between sleeping and waking, you noticed her entrance and her actions. But feverish, almost delirious as you were, you ascribed to her a goblin appearance different from her own. The long disheveled hair, the swelled black face, the exaggerated stature, were figments of imagination, results of nightmare. The spiteful tearing of the veil was real, and it is like her. I see why you would ask why I keep such a woman in my house. When we have been married a year and a day, I will tell you, but not now. Are you satisfied, Jane? Do you accept my solution of the mystery? I reflected, and in truth it appeared to me the only possible one. Satisfied I was not, but to please him I endeavored to appear so. Relieved I certainly did feel, but to sorry, relieved I certainly did feel. So I answered him with a contented smile. And now, as it was long past 1, I prepared to leave him. "Does not Sophie sleep with Adele in the nursery?" he asked as I lit my candle. "Yes, sir." "And there is room enough in Adele's little bed for you. You must share it with her tonight, Jane. It is no wonder that the incident you have related should make you so nervous, and I would rather you did not sleep alone. Promise me to go to the nursery." "I shall be very glad to do so, sir." "And fasten the door securely on the inside. Wake Sophie when you go upstairs, under pretense of requesting her to rouse you in good time tomorrow, for you must be dressed and have finished breakfast before 8. And now, no more somber thoughts. Chase dull care away, Janet. Don't you hear what soft whispers the wind has fallen? And here is no more beating of rain against the window panes. Look here." He lifted up the curtain. "It is a lovely night." It was. Half heaven was pure and stainless. The clouds, now trooping before the wind, which had shifted to the west, were filing off eastward in long silvered columns. The moon shone peacefully. "Well," said Mr. Rochester, gazing inquiringly into my eyes, "how's my Janet now?" "The night is serene, sir, and so am I." "And you will not dream of separation and sorrow tonight, but of happy love and blissful union." This prediction was but half fulfilled. I did not indeed dream of sorrow, but as little did I dream of joy, for I never slept at all. With little Adele in my arms, I watched the slumber of childhood, so tranquil, so passionless, so innocent, and waited for the coming day. All my life was awake and astir in my frame, and as soon as the sun rose, I rose too. I remember Adele clung to me as I left her. I remember I kissed her as I loosened her little hands from my neck, and I cried over her with strange emotion, and quitted her because I feared my sobs would break her still sound repose. She seemed the emblem of my past life, and here I was now to array myself to meet the dread but adored type of my unknown future day. End of chapter. Okay, so Jane got a visitor. Who is this visitor? It was Grace Poole, and she saw Grace Poole through vision, and she was delusional. And I mean, it couldn't be anything except what Rochester said. Like, we have to believe in Rochester 100%, right? Because he is the male lead in this story, and of course he will never lie. He will never gaslit Jane. Oh no. Oh my goodness. Okay, so that is, I think I have some time. Oh man, I really want to read the next one, you guys. The wedding day. Let's see. Let me see if I can probably do it. I think I'll try it. I'll do it. Okay. So, Akihana says, gonna head to the kitchen for some chicken jerky. Okay, enjoy your midnight snack. And then Noodle Something Kimchi says, I mean, just look at the Titanic alone. Miss Unsinkable's life was crazy, filled with danger, and this was a pretty recent history. Yes, so again, saying how post letters probably, maybe sometimes did not make their intended journey. Sometimes they just got lost. Yeah. Oh, hello, Vincent. There you are. Happy to see you. Well, I hope you're still with us. Happy to see some of the Europe gang join us. Let's see. So yes, Noodle Something Kimchi says, man, this is suspicious. Why the rush? Exactly. Why the rush? He's like, okay, we have to leave immediately upon. Okay, the wedding is going to be at 8, and they're going to leave within half an hour of the wedding being done. Like, goodbye. I don't know, man. Yes, if everybody is feeling suspicious, yes, you should feel suspicious. Akihana says, the shortest engagement period I often observe here is at least 100 days for those who have recently lost a relative. Okay, so like about 3 months, 3 and something months. Yeah, engagements should be longer than a month. Um, let's see. Yes, so there's Kihana does point out a blood moon, another omen. Yes, there's a whole bunch of omens here. Remember the tree that got struck by lightning, that got struck in half? We have wind, we have also the direction of the wind. It does have symbolic meaning. So if you go back after we're done, or after we read a few more chapters, and you go back to read all the symbolisms here, you're like, dang, she was laying it on really heavy on the symbolism. So the direction of the wind and stuff like that, the clouds, the moon. The Again, let's talk about the child, right? Um, the child in question. She always dreams about children when something bad is gonna happen, or like somebody's gonna die. Mostly when somebody's gonna. Oh my gosh. Okay, I cannot say anything more. But yeah, when something really bad is gonna happen, there's a child. So she dreamt of it. She dreamt of the child during when her aunt was gonna die. And Rochester's like, yeah, you have been too overexcited, too nervous, too anxious. Like the wedding is just being like giving you anxiety. She's like, no, no, no. Like yeah, I'm excited, but not anxious. Like I wasn't anxious. Like the thing that's causing me anxiety is like what you're trying to hide. Like explain to me so I can be like totally happy. Because the only thing that she's really anxious about is the dreams and the fact that there's something dark and terrible in the house, and we finally caught a sight of it. Still don't know what the heck she saw. Grace Poole is really I kind of feel sorry for Grace Poole. Like she's a scapegoat. Oh my gosh, Grace Poole. Anything happens, just blame it on Grace Poole, you guys. Silverware goes missing, blame it on Grace Poole. You fell off the stairs, blame it on Grace Poole. Lightning struck the tree and cleft it in half, blame it on Grace Poole. She's perfect. She's eccentric, so you know, what can you do? Whatever is the secret, though, Rochester says there is a secret and he will tell her once they've been married a year. Dang, like, dude, can you be more shady? Let's see. Yeah, noodles, dumplings, kimchi. He's gaslighting so hard, it's sad. Yeah, it's so hard, it's scary, and so hard, it's... Dude, like, yeah, this is before there was the term gaslighting, but it's... Yeah, this is gaslighting at its finest. Yeah, she's being vulnerable. She said she opened her heart entirely. She was like, I love you, and I'm so, like, she has never been like sentimental or soft. He said, like, all this time you have been like like thorns. Like I try to be like woo you and be romantic, and you like push me away. And now she's like actually like opening up her heart and telling him how much she loves him. And he lies to her, like, honestly, like, Rochester, how could you? Yeah, he's being dismissive. I don't know about lying. He's just like gaslighting her, which I guess it's like a lie too. Oh man. Let's see. It's also odd, says Akihana. It's also odd that for a rich guy like Rochester to insist on a quiet wedding, almost secretive even. Now, let me see something here. Let me see. How long were the bands read for? Okay. All right, so back in the day, and I don't know if they still do this, but at least in the Regency era, they had something called the banns. So banns were announced in home parishes of the parties involved for 3 Sundays in a row. So anytime you went to church for 3 Sundays in a row, they were like, okay, Jane Eyre, Mr. Rochester of Thornfield Hall is going to be marrying Jane Eyre in a month's time. If anybody is here that knows that something is up, like anything, like any impediments, please let us know. Before like they go through it. Like if you know like one of them is a criminal or one of them is like I don't know. So anything that should be known, that should be disclosed. Like, please let the parishioner, or let let the pastor know, so that everything is out in the open. So bans of marriage, public legal notice made in a church proclaiming an intention of impending marriage with the object that persons aware of any impediment to the marriage may make their objection known. So, remember that I object, that thing in the movies. Well, a trifle dramatic, because they used to do this at least 3 weeks before the wedding. So it's like, he's like, okay, fine, we'll have the bans read, I guess. But even so, you could still go around and circumvent this need for bans. So rich people, let me see, how long were the bans read for? Marriage, special license, England, Victorian era. Sorry, I'm Googling here. All right. So prior to January, let me see if I can, a second. So prior to January 1755, the vicars general, and after the date, the archbishop, blah, 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 could also issue a special license allowing marriage at any time and in any church or chapel or other meet and convenient place. So basically, if you were rich enough and had enough contacts, you could marry using a special license. But you would have to get like the Bishop of Canterbury, the Archbishop of Canterbury, and all these people to sign it, which let you get married basically at any time. So without reading the bans, so without having to wait for the 3-week period or 4-week period or whatever. And you could marry at any place, because in this era, you had to be married from where you were. So destination weddings weren't happening here in England. Like, you could be like, living in London, but if you wanted to get married, no, you could be married in, let's say, York, right? But say you wanted to get married in a big, huge church in London, you couldn't. You had to be married from your local church in York, unless you had a special license. Again, marriages and all these things, they were kind of tedious, but they were important for a reason, because people were doing all kinds of crazy things back in the day when there was no computer records. So everything, like the parish, the church, was the center of all life. Like, birth certificates were there, marriage certificates were there. That's why everybody had to be married in their own place, so that people could trace their origins. So that's why nowadays, it's, if you're of European descent, you can trace your ancestry to whoosh, whenever, at least in England, because they use these things. All the records were kept in parishes and stuff like that. So anyway, so that's just pretty interesting stuff to me. I love history, so yes. Let's see. Is it possible that Grace has a split person? Ooh, I will not I will not confirm or deny. I cannot, because spoilers. But, or maybe she's the, I don't know, man. I don't know. I cannot say anything. In that case, could his recent errand possibly be together? Ooh, maybe. You know what? Maybe that makes sense, because I was like, what does he need to do in England that he has to go and get it immediately? There was something he had to do. I had never thought of that. Yeah, maybe his recent errand was to go get that special license. Yeah, because he had a whole bunch of money. Yeah, so he can skip the bans. Jane never said that they were reading the bans, by the way. She never said they were reading the bans. Nope. Hello, Block Shroud. Happy to see you. Just about an hour late. Just the obligatory hi while starting from the beginning. Block Shroud, please don't go. We're gonna start a good chapter, the chapter. So please don't go. I will give you a quick TLDR, but don't go. I'm gonna read the next chapter, and I want you to experience it live. Block Shroud. So what happened is, so Jane is basically engaged to Rochester. The night before they're gonna get married, he comes home and she's waiting for him, distressed, anxious, Like, she's like, I just saw something, like, last night while you were away. I saw something terrible and dreadful. Somebody got into my room. It was somebody I did not know, a woman I did not recognize, have never seen them before, but it was horrible. It was like a person that reminded me of like a vampire. And she was trying on my wedding veil. And then when she turned around and looked at me, she drew me. She tore the wedding veil in half, stamped it on the ground. Then she came over to my way. And then I was terror stricken. And then I passed out and she stayed there. And then when I woke up, she was gone. But it was not a dream because I still saw my veil on the ground torn in half. So she's like, who was that? Explain to me, Rochester, what I just saw. And Rochester's like, yo, that was super scary, but you know what? You were dreaming. It was half reality and half a dream. It was Grace Poole, and you were just, with your wild imagination, you imagined that it was a vampire or something like that. But still, wedding is gonna happen, and it's gonna happen right now, and it is time for us to delve into that. Yeah, I just hope that the child... No. I just hope that the child in Jane's dream, says Akihana. I hope that the child in Jane's dream wasn't symbolism for Adele. I hope so too. Precious Adele, please no. All right, you guys, it's time to read The Wedding. I have been waiting for a long time about The Wedding. It's a good chapter. So, Blockshot, I hope you're still with us. Let's get to it. Sorry, water break. Chapter 26. Sophie came at... Sorry again. Chapter 26. Sophie came at 7 to dress me. She was very long indeed in accomplishing her task, so long that Mr. Rochester, grown, I suppose, impatient of my delay, sent up to ask why I did not come. She was just fastening my veil, the plain square of blonde after all, to my hair with a brooch. I hurried from under her hands as soon as I could. "Stop!" she cried in French. "Look at yourself in the mirror. You have not taken one peep." So I turned at the door. I saw a robed and veiled figure, so unlike my usual self that it seemed almost the image of a stranger. "Jane!" called a voice, and I hastened down. I was received at the foot of the stairs by Mr. Rochester. "Lingerer! My brain is on fire with impatience, and you tarry so long." He took me into the dining room, surveyed me keenly all over, pronounced me fair as a lily, and not only the pride of his life, but the desire of his eyes. And then, telling me he would give me but 10 minutes to eat some breakfast, he rang the bell. One of his lately hired servants, a footman, answered it. "Is John getting the carriage ready?" "Yes, sir." "Is the luggage brought down?" "They are bringing it down, sir." "Go you to the church. See if Mr. Wood, the clergyman, and the clerk are there. Return and tell me." The church, as the reader knows, was but just beyond the gates. The footman soon returned. "Mr. Wood is in the vestry, sir, putting on his surplice." "And the carriage?" "The horses are harnessing." "We shall not want it to go to church, but it must be ready the moment we return. All the boxes and luggage arranged and strapped on, and the coachman in his seat." "Yes, sir." "Jane, are you ready?" I rose. There were no groomsmen, no bridesmaids, no relatives to wait for or marshal. None but Mr. Rochester and I. Mrs. Fairfax stood in the hall as we passed. I would fain have spoken to her, but my hand was held by a grasp of iron. I was hurried along by a stride I could hardly follow, and to look at Mr. Rochester's face was to feel that not a second of delay would be tolerated for any purpose. I wonder what other bridegroom ever looked as he did, so bent up to a purpose, so grimly resolute, or who, under such steadfast brows, ever revealed such flaming and flashing eyes. I know not whether the day was fair or foul. In descending the drive, I gazed neither on sky nor earth. My heart was with my eyes, and both seemed migrated into Mr. Rochester's frame. I wanted to see the invisible thing on which, as we went along, he appeared to fasten a glance fierce and fell. I wanted to feel the thoughts whose force he seemed breasting and resisting. At the churchyard wicket he stopped. He discovered I was quite out of breath. "Am I cruel in my love?" he said. "Delay an instant. Lean on me, Jane." And now I can recall the picture of the grey old house of God rising calm before me, of a rook wheeling round the steeple, of a ruddy morning sky beyond. I remember something, too, of the green grave mounds, and I have not forgotten either 2 figures of strangers straying amongst the low hillocks and reading the mementos graven on the few mossy headstones. I noticed them because as they saw us, they passed round to the back of the church, and I doubted not they were going to enter by the side aisle door and witness the ceremony. By Mr. Rochester they were not observed. He was earnestly looking at my face, from which the blood had, I dare say, momentarily fled, for I felt my forehead dewy and my cheeks and lips cold. When I rallied, which I soon did, he walked gently with me up the path to the porch. We entered the quiet and humble temple. The priest waited in his white surplice and the lowly altar, the clerk beside him. All was still. 2 shadows only moved in the remote corner. My conjecture had been correct. The strangers had slipped in before us, and they now stood by the vault of the Rochesters, their backs toward us, viewing through the rails the old time-stained marble tomb, where a kneeling angel guarded the remains of Damer de Rochester, slain at Marston Moor in the time of the Civil Wars, and of Elizabeth, his bride. Our place was taken at the communion rails. Hearing a cautious step behind me, I glanced over my shoulder. One of the strangers, a gentleman evidently, was advancing up the chancel. The service began. The explanation of the intent of matrimony was gone through, and then the clergyman came a step further toward, and bending slightly towards Mr. Rochester, went on. "I require and charge you both, as you will answer at the dreadful day of judgment, when the secrets of all hearts shall be disclosed, that if either of you know any impediment why ye may not lawfully be joined together in matrimony, ye do now ye do now confess it. For be ye well assured that so many as are coupled together otherwise than God's word doth allow, and are not joined together by God, neither is their matrimony lawful." He paused, as the custom is. When is the pause after that sentence ever broken by reply? Not perhaps once in 100 years. And the clergyman, who had now lifted his eyes from his book, and had held his breath but for a moment, was proceeding. His hand was already stretched toward Mr. Rochester, and his lips unclosed to ask, "Wilt thou have this woman for thy wedded wife?" When a distinct and near voice said, "The marriage cannot go on. I declare the existence of an impediment." The clergyman looked up at the speaker and stood mute. The clerk did the same. Mr. Rochester moved slightly, as if an earthquake had rolled under his feet. Taking a firmer footing, and not turning his head or eyes, he said, "Proceed." A profound silence fell when he had uttered that word, with deep but low intonation. Presently, Mr. Wood, sir, "I cannot proceed without some investigation into what has been asserted, and evidence of its truth or falsehood." "The ceremony is quite broken off," subjoined the voice behind us. "I am in condition to prove my allegation. An insuperable impediment to this marriage exists." Mr. Rochester heard, but heeded not. He stood stubborn and rigid, making no movement but to possess himself of my hand. What a hot and strong gasp he had, and how like quarried marble was his pale, firm, massive front at this moment! How his eyes shone, still watchful and yet wild beneath! Mr. Wood seemed at a loss. "What is the nature of this impediment? Perhaps it may be got over, explained away?" "Hardly," was the answer. I have called it insuperable, and I speak advisedly. The speaker came forward and leaned on the rails. He continued, uttering each word distinctly, calmly, steadily, but not loudly. It simply consists in the existence of a previous marriage. Mr. Rochester has a wife now living. My nerves vibrated to those slow-spoken words as they had never vibrated to thunder. My blood felt their subtle violence as it had never felt frost or fire. But I was collected, and in no danger of swooning. I looked at Mr. Rochester and made him look at me. His whole face was colorless rock. His eye was both spark and flint. He disavowed nothing. He seemed as if he would defy all things. Without speaking, without smiling, without seeming to recognize in me a human being, he only twined my waist with his arm and riveted me to his side. "Who are you?" he asked of the intruder. "My name is Briggs, a solicitor of Blank Street, London. And you would thrust on me a wife?" "I would remind you of your lady's existence, sir, which the law recognizes if you do not." "Favor me with an account of her, with her name, her parentage, her place of abode." "Certainly." Mr. Briggs calmly took a paper from his pocket and read it out in a sort of official nasal voice. "I affirm and can prove that on the 20th of October A.D. blank, a date of 15 years back, Edward Fairfax Rochester of Thornfield Hall in the county of Blank and of Ferndean Manor in Blankshire, England, was married to my sister Bertha Antonetta Mason, daughter of Jonas Mason, merchant, and of Antoinetta, his wife, a Creole, at Blank Church, Spanish Town, Jamaica. The record of the marriage will be found in the register of that church. A copy of it now is in my possession. Signed, Richard Mason. That, if a genuine document, may prove I have been married, but it does not prove that the woman mentioned therein as my wife is still living." "She was living here 3 months ago," returned the lawyer. "How do you know?" "I have a witness to the fact, whose testimony even you, sir, will scarcely controvert." "Produce him or go to hell." "I will produce him first. He is on the spot. Mr. Mason, have the goodness to step forward." Mr. Rochester, on hearing the name, set his teeth. He experienced, too, a sort of strong convulsive quiver. Near to him as I was, I felt the spasmodic movement of fury or despair run through his frame. The second stranger who had hitherto lingered in the background now drew near. A pale face looked over the solicitor's shoulder. Yes, it was Mason himself. Mr. Rochester turned and glared at him. His eye, as I have often said, was a black eye. It had now a tawny, nay, a bloody light in its gloom, and his face flushed. Olive cheek and hueless forehead received a glow as from spreading, ascending heart fire, and he stirred, lifted his strong arm. He could have struck Mason, dashed him on the church floor, shocked by a ruthless blow from the breadth of his body. But Mason shrank away and cried faintly, "Good God!" Contempt fell cool on Mr. Rochester. His passion died as if a blight had shriveled it up. He only asked, "What have you to say?" An inaudible reply escaped Mason's lips. "The devil in it if you cannot answer distinctly. I again demand, what have you to say?" Sir, do not interrupted the clergyman. "Do not forget you are in a sacred place." Then addressing Mason, he inquired gently, "Are you aware, sir, whether or not this gentleman's life is still living?" "Courage," urged the lawyer. "Speak out." "She is now living at Thornfield Hall," said Mason in more articulate tones. "I saw her there last April. I am her brother." "At Thornfield Hall?" ejaculated the clergyman. "Impossible! I am an old resident in this neighborhood, sir, and I never heard of a Mrs. Rochester at Thornfield Hall." I saw a grim smile contort Mr. Rochester's lips, and he muttered, "No, by God, I took care that none should hear of it, or of her under that name." he mused. For 10 minutes he held counsel with himself. He formed his resolve and announced it. Enough! All shall bolt out at once, like the bullet from the barrel. Wood, close your book and take off your surplice. John Green, to the clerk, leave the church. There will be no wedding today. The man obeyed. Mr. Rochester continued, hardly and recklessly, Bigamy is an ugly word. I meant, however, to be a bigamist, but fate has outmaneuvered me, or Providence has checked me. Perhaps the last. I am little better than a devil at this moment, and, as my pastor there would tell me, deserve no doubt the sternest judgments of God, even to the quenchless fire and deathless worm. Gentlemen, my plan is broken up. What this lawyer and his client say is true. I have been married, and the woman to whom I was married lives. You say you never heard of Mrs. Rochester at the house up yonder? Would. But I dare say you have many a time inclined your ear to gossip about the mysterious lunatic kept there under watch and guard and ward. Some have whispered to you that she is my bastard half-sister. Some, my cast-off mistress. I now inform you that she is my wife, whom I married 15 years ago, Bertha Mason by name, sister of this resolute personage, who is now, with his quivering limbs and white cheeks, showing you what a stout heart men may bear. Cheer up, Dick. Never fear me. I'd as soon strike a woman as you. Bertha Mason is mad, and she came from a mad family, idiots and maniacs through 3 generations. Her mother, the Creole, was both a madwoman and a drunkard, as I found out after I had wed a daughter, for they were silent on family secrets before. Bertha, like a dutiful child, copied her parents in both points. I had a charming partner, pure, wise, modest. You can fancy I was a happy man. I went through rich scenes. Oh, my experience has been heavenly, if only you knew it. But I owe you no further explanation. Briggs, Wood, Mason, I invite you all to come up to the house and visit Mrs. Poole's patient and my wife. You shall see what sort of a being I was cheated into espousing, and judge whether or not I had a right to break the compact and seek sympathy with something at least human. This girl, he continued, looking at me, knew no more than you would of the disgusting secret. She thought all was fair and legal, never dreamt she was going to be entrapped into a feigned union with a defrauded wretch already bound to a bad, mad, and imbruted partner. Come, all of you, follow! Still holding me fast, he left the church, and 3 gentlemen came after. At the front door of the hall we found a carriage. Take it back to the coach-house, John, said Mr. Rochester coolly. It will not be wanted today. At our entrance, Mrs. Fairfax, Adele, Sophie, Leah advanced to meet and greet us. To the right about every soul, cried my master. Away with your congratulations. Who wants them? Not I. They are 15 years too late. He passed on and ascended the stairs, still holding my hand, and still beckoning the gentlemen to follow him, which they did. We mounted the first staircase, passed up the gallery, proceeded to the 3rd story. The low black door, opened by Mr. Rochester's master key, admitted us to the tapestried room, with its great bed and its pictorial cabinet. You know this place, Mason, said our guide. She bit and stabbed you here. He lifted the hangings from the wall, uncovering the 2nd door. This, too, he opened. In a room without a window, there burnt a fire, guarded by a high and strong fender, and a lamp suspended from the ceiling by a chain. Grace Poole bent over the fire, apparently cooking something in a saucepan. In the deep shade, at the further end of a room, a figure ran backwards and forwards. What it was, whether beast or human being, one could not at first sight tell. It grovelled, seemingly on all 4s. It snatched and growled like some strange wild animal, but it was covered with clothing and a quantity of dark, grizzled hair, wild as a mane hid its head and face. Good morrow, Mrs. Poole, said Mr. Rochester. How are you? How's your charge today? We're tolerable, sir, I thank you, replied Grace, lifting the boiling mess carefully onto the knob. Rather snappish, but not dangerous. A fierce cry seemed to give the lie to her favorable report. The clothed hyena rose up and stood tall on its hind feet. "Ah, sir, she sees you!" exclaimed Grace. "You'd better not stay." "Only a few moments, Grace. You must allow me a few moments." "Take care, then, sir. For God's sake, take care!" The maniac bellowed. She parted her shaggy locks from her visage and gazed wildly at her visitors. I recognized well that purple face, those bloated features. Mrs. Poole advanced. Keep out of the way," said Mr. Rochester, thrusting her aside. "She has no knife, I suppose, and I'm on my guard." "One never knows what she has, sir. She's so cunning, and it's not in mortal discretion to phantom her craft." We had better leave her," whispered Mason. "Go to the devil," was his brother-in-law's recommendation. "Where?" cried Grace. The three gentlemen retreated simultaneously. Mr. Rochester flung me behind him. The lunatic sprang and grappled his throat viciously and laid her teeth to his cheek. They struggled. She was a big woman, in stature almost equaling her husband, and corpulent besides. She showed virile force in the contest. More than at once she had almost throttled him, athletic as he was. He could have settled her with a well-planted blow, but he would not strike. He would only wrestle. At last he mastered her arms. Grace Poole gave him a cord, and he pinioned them behind her. With more rope, which was at hand, he bound her to a chair. The operation was performed amidst the fiercest yells and the most convulsive plunges. Mr. Rochester then turned to the spectators. He looked at them with a smile, both acrid and desolate. "That is my wife," said he. "Such is the desolate conjugal embrace I am ever to know. Such are the endearments which are to solace my leisure hours. And this is what I wish to have," laying his hand on my shoulder. "This young girl, who stands so grave and quiet at the mouth of hell, looking collectedly at the gambols of a demon. I wanted her just as a change after that fierce ragout. Wood and Briggs, look at the difference. Compare these clear eyes with the red balls yonder, this face with that mask, this form with that bulk. Then judge me, priest of the gospel and man of the law, and remember, with what judgment ye judge, ye shall be judged. Off with you now, I must shut up my prize." We all withdrew. Mr. Rochester stayed a moment behind us to give some further order to Grace Poole. The solicitor addressed me as he descended the stair. "You, madam, are cleared from all blame. Your uncle will be glad to hear it, if indeed he should be still living, when Mr. Mason returns to Madeira." "My uncle? What of him? Do you know him?" "Mr. Mason does. Mr. Eyre has been a defunctional correspondent of his house for some years. When your uncle received your letter intimating the contemplated union between yourself and Mr. Rochester, Mr. Mason, who was staying at Madeira to recruit his health on his way back to Jamaica, happened to be with him. Mr. Eyre mentioned the intelligence, for he knew that my client here was acquainted with a gentleman of the name of Rochester. Mr. Mason, astonished and distressed as you may suppose, revealed the real state of matters. Your uncle, I am sorry to say, is now on a sick bed, from which, considering the nature of his disease, decline, and the stage it has reached, it is unlikely he will ever rise. He could not hasten to England himself to extricate you from the snare into which you had fallen, but he implored Mr. Mason to lose no time in taking steps to prevent the false marriage. He referred him to me for assistance. I used all dispatch, and am thankful I was not too late, as you doubtless must be also. Were I not morally certain that your uncle will be dead ere you reach Madeira, I would advise you to accompany Mr. Mason back. But as it is, I think you had better remain in England till you can hear further, either from or of Mr. Eyre. Have we anything else to stay for?" he inquired Mr. Mason. "No, no, let us be gone," was the anxious reply. And without waiting to take leave of Mr. Rochester, they made their exit at the hall door. The clergyman stayed to exchange a few sentences either of admonition or reproof with his haughty parishioner. This duty done, he too departed. I heard him go as I stood at the half-open door of my own room, to which I had now withdrawn. The house cleared. I shut myself in, fastened the bolt that none might intrude, and proceeded, not to weep, not to mourn. I was yet too calm for that, but mechanically to take off the wedding dress and replace it by the stuff gown I had worn yesterday, as I thought, for the last time. I then sat down. I felt weak and tired. I leaned my arms on a table, and my head dropped on them. And now, I thought, till now I had only heard, seen, moved, followed up and down where I was led or dragged, watched event rush on event, disclosure open beyond disclosure. But now, I thought. The morning had been a quiet morning enough. All except the brief scene with the lunatic. The transaction in the church had not been noisy. There was no explosion of passion, no loud altercation, no dispute, no defiance or challenge, no tears, no sobs. A few words had been spoken, a calmly pronounced objection to the marriage made, some stern, short questions put by Mr. Rochester, answers, explanations given, evidence adduced. An open admission of the truth had been uttered by my master. Then the living proof had been seen, the intruders were gone, and all was over. I was in my own room as usual, just myself, without obvious change. Nothing had smitten me, or scathed me, or maimed me, and yet, where was Jane Eyre of yesterday? Where was her life? Where were her prospects? Jane Eyre, who had been an ardent, expectant woman, almost a bride, was a cold, solitary girl again. Her life was pale. Her prospects were desolate. A Christmas frost had come at midsummer. A white December storm had whirled over June. Ice glazed at the ripe apples. Drifts crushed the blowing roses. On hayfield and cornfield lay a frozen shroud. Lanes which last night blushed full of flowers, today were pathless with untrodden snow. And the woods which 12 hours since waved leafy and flagrant as groves between the tropics, now spread, waste, wild and white, as pine forests in wintry Norway. My hopes were all dead, struck with a subtle doom, such as in one night fell on all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. I looked on my cherished wishes, yesterday so blooming and glowing, they lay stark, chill, livid corpses that could never revive. I looked at my love, that feeling which was my master's, which he had created. It shivered in my heart like a suffering child in a cold cradle. Sickness and anguish had seized it. It could not seek Mr. Rochester's arms. It could not derive warmth from his breast. Oh, never more could it turn to him, for faith was blighted, confidence destroyed. Mr. Rochester was not to me what he had been, for he was not what I thought him. I would not ascribe vice to him. I could not say he had betrayed him, but the attribute of stainless truth was gone from his idea, and from his presence I must go. That I perceived well. When, how, whither, I could not yet discern. He himself, I doubted not, would hurry me from Thornfield. Real affection, it seemed, he could not have for me. It had only been fitful passion. That was balked. He would want me no more. I would fear even to cross his path now. My view must be hateful to him. Oh, how blind had been my eyes, how weak my conduct! My eyes were covered and closed. Eddying darkness seemed to swim round me, and reflection came in, as black and confused as flow. Self-abandoned, relaxed and effortless, I seemed to have laid me down in the dried-up bed of a great river. I heard a flood loosened in remote mountains, and felt the torrent come. To rise I had no will. To flee I had no strength. I lay faint, longing to be dead. One idea only still throbbed lifelike within me, the remembrance of God. It begot an unuttered prayer. These words went wandering up and down in my rayless minds, as something that should be whispered, but no energy was found to express them. Be not far from me, for trouble is near. There is none to help. It was near, and, as I had lifted no petition to heaven to avert it, As I neither joined my hands, nor bent my knees, nor moved my lips, it came. In full heavy swing, the torrent poured over me. The whole consciousness of my life lorn, my love lost, my hope quenched, my faith death struck, swayed full and mighty above me in one sullen mass. That bitter hour cannot be described. In truth, the waters came into my soul. I sank in deep mire. I felt no standing. I came into deep waters. The floods overflowed me. End of chapter. Whew. Well, so now the secret's out, you guys. Yeah, that's a pretty terrible secret. I'm pretty sure most of you may who had not read this book may have kind of pieced together your own suppositions of what was the terrible secret of Thornfield Hall. But I don't know, it's just every time I read it and see how like the morning starts with such promise and then just goes into like this total chaotic nightmare. It's so sad, you guys. I feel so sorry for Jane, and I get so angry at Rochester for having put her through this. Yeah, so yeah, Rochester, you did our girl so bad and took advantage of the fact that she was in her first love, trusted him so much. She was unexperienced, unsheltered, and you know what? If it hadn't been because of all people, you guys, of all people, Mr. Mason, she would have gone through with it. They would have gotten married, and it would have been oh my god, Crusher. That meme really scares me. It would have been awful, you guys. She would have married him, and he would have kept the truth from her for the longest time, and who knows what that would have. Oh my gosh, it would have been a totally different story, you guys. But again, even though she doesn't see it, Providence was on her side. Like right now, she says even her faith is dead. Like she cannot call upon God to help her through this whole situation. But Providence is still there. Like the events still, what do I say? Everything worked for Jane's good. Like Rochester had no right to pull Jane into something like a marriage, a bigoted marriage. And he did very wrong, and Providence checked him. Or fate checked him. Whatever it was, he needed to be checked, and I'm so glad it did. Unfortunately, Jane went through something very terrible. The only positive thing that I can see is that they didn't announce the wedding everywhere, so it's not like her name is disgraced. Like it was very secretive, so whatever happened, whatever happened in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas, like whatever happened in Thornfield Hall will stay in Thornfield Hall. So yeah, we got lots of answers. Like if you now go back to read all of the clues, you will see that it was so many hints. And if you go back to read about like Rochester's musings, where he was talking about his past but not really disclosing what it was that he was so angry and so bitter about, now you get to see what it was. It was a marriage. He married Bertha not knowing that she was like either she was already crazy, or that she was gonna go crazy, or that she had some intellectual defect, whatever. So he got married, he got hitched to get married, and he discovered his error too late. So and he basically despaired and threw himself into a life of debauchery when he couldn't do anything about it. So that's what happened. So anyway, you guys, it's been a while. It's been a long read along, so we will do one more not one more chapter. No, no, no. We will not do it. We will continue our read along on Wednesday. But for now, I'm just really, really thankful you guys joined me, and I had lots of fun reading this. It's one of my favorite chapters. You guys, what do you guys think about Rochester's conduct here? Like, are you like, do you think he had it like he to himself, he was justified in what he did. He was justified in what he did. What do you think? Was he justified or not? Like, what do you guys think? I don't know. Also, how do you feel about Mason now? Like, I know we all hate Mason. We all dislike Mason just because he looks so sus. But nobody's sussier than Rochester, honestly. So, has your opinion of Mason changed? What about Jane and her uncle? We learned that her uncle is still alive, thank God. And the letter did make it to the uncle, you guys. And it just happened that the uncle and Mason know each other. Talk about coincidence, you guys. And the uncle is like, "Oh, you know, I'm Mr. Rochester. Here, my niece, Jane Eyre, she tells me that she's gonna marry Mr. Rochester. You know this guy, right?" And then, of course, Mason's like, "No way, this cannot be true." And then he told the uncle. So the uncle, we know, cannot, is, the lawyer is like, he's on his sickbed, and his illness, whatever it is so great that he won't rise from it. He's gonna die pretty soon, probably. So what do you guys think of all this? Was it coincidental? Do you think it makes sense? I mean, the uncle works in Madeira. I mean, he made his business in Madeira. Let's see. Madeira. Where is Madeira? Madeira. Madeira or Madeira? Whatever. Let me see. Just pulling up something. Okay, let's read Madeira. Let's see what this tells us. Let's pull it up a little bit here. Whatever. Okay. So you have Madeira, a region. Okay. But where is it? Where's Madeira? Oh, it is right here. So basically, Mason left England, but remember, he was sick. He needed to like recover from the attack. So he dropped it. Instead of doing a huge long journey home to the West Indies, Spanish town Jamaica, he instead decided to just stop by Madeira, where there's like a friend of his, or at least a family associate. And so he stayed with Jane's uncle. Madeira. By the way, I saw some images of Madeira and it looks amazing. Wow. Like, how Madeira wine? How can you grow wine here? I guess it's not all just mountains, but yeah, the Madeira wine. There's more Madeira. I don't know. I'm just showing you pictures of Madeira. So yeah, the uncle was there, and just so happened that luckily the they got to Jane on time. And what were they doing, like, when what are the name? When Jane saw them at the graves, they were probably looking to see, just in case, they're like, well, and we want to make sure that there's no new grave at the church, because then that could probably be that my sister died. But no, they were out in the gravesite looking at the graves, and there was no grave for a new person. So yeah, I always wondered why they were out there looking at the graves, and it just struck me as I was reading today. Yeah, they were looking to see if maybe in the meantime, what's her face, Bertha had died. Now, okay, what do we think about Grace Poole now? All right, Grace Poole, the scapegoat for every single sin in this book. Turns out Grace was only just the one that took care of Bertha. She was taking care of Bertha, the insane person. It's locked up in the attic, and that's why the servants were whispering about her. Like, she usually kept to herself, one, and two, she also made bank. Like, she made a lot of money. She made at least 5 times what servants usually made just by taking care of Bertha. With good reason. Did you guys see Bertha? The poor woman. She basically described more like an animal. She described her like a hyena almost. I'm like, dude, pretty bad. So yes, let's see, what else? Uh, yeah, so the question, Akihana says, okay, so here's a question. The child in her arms, in her dreams, did it point to her uncle being in sickbed, possibly deathbed, or was it pointing to her love lost over a secret unveiled? You know what? The uncle we know for sure is gonna die, so it could be the uncle, but I definitely think it was her subconscious telling her that what she was gonna do, all her hopes for a future to become Jane Rochester were dead. It was not possible. So, I think it was both. So going back to cases of insanity, noodles, dumplings, kimchi, and both lists bring up some issues about how back in the day, insanity was treated, you guys. Did you guys know that they used to lock up insane people and criminals in the same place? Yes. Back in the day, you didn't see homeless people or anything like that because, one, homeless people were thrown into jail for vagrancy. Or they were sent to the workhouse where they were basically like cheap labor and would die quickly because of the unhealthy conditions. And the insane, they were locked up. They were just like locked up, like in jail. And it wasn't like they were kept in a padded room. They were kept in like either one, solitary confinement if they were actually kind of lucky, or they were thrown into like a common room with every other person in there in jail. Like, you could have rapists, murderers, molesters there, and an insane person there. It was a terrible time to be alive back then, honestly, you guys. I don't know, man. It was terrible for everybody. So you can imagine what kind of horrors people would have lived through if you had like mental issues, not just insanity, you guys, but like say schizophrenia or something like that, you were immediately locked up or whatever. So I don't know, man. It was just a cruel time to be alive in here for everybody. Yes. Teal says, wow, so much happened. Too bad I was late. Aw, Teal, I'm sorry you missed it. But you can always watch the replay. Happy to see you though. And I hope you don't miss out on Wednesday's read along. And join me there. Again, let me know what you thought about this part of Jane Eyre. The biggest spoiler of all time. Like, I was just hoping that nobody would spoil the fact that Bertha and all that stuff, the story. Now we're kind of safe. We're still going to talk about Rochester's backstory on the next one. So, I mean, don't go crazy if you want to comment on the spoilers, but you can now talk about it. Just anyway, thank you to all of you who already read this book and were kind enough to not spoil it for those who hadn't. I hope the surprise hope the surprise caught you by surprise. I hope the identity of this mystery in Thornfield, it came out as a surprise to you. When I read it, no, I didn't read it. I watched the movie first and I was shocked. I was very shocked indeed. So I hope you also experienced that kind of like a little bit of shock. Anyway, you guys, I'm off. I have to rest my voice because I have a read along over on my Discord server in, I don't know, a few hours? Noon? What time? I think, yeah, what time is the Discord? Let me see. Yeah, I have a read along in see what time. Yes, I have a read-along today at noon. So if you are a bookworm fan and you are a member of my Ko-fi, you should join us. We're starting just reading on the server. We don't go live anymore, but we still read. We have several people joining us. So join us. It'll be fun. Woohoo! We got some new people coming in. Cool, cool, cool. Again, support your magpie. This channel is not monetized at all. So if you like the stuff, if you want to hear me read more books, join me over on Ko-fi or donate on Ko-fi. That's all. All right, you guys. Take care. We'll see you on Wednesday. Love you all. Bye-bye.